All right, what's going on, my friends? It's now 3 o'clock. Chad here. We have a developing situation in Omaha. The Beavers trailed 6-3 going into the ninth. They have now tied it up at 6. They have 2 on and 1 out, looking to take the lead. If the Beavs win, they will advance to meet Coastal Carolina again and would need back-to-back wins against Coastal Carolina to reach the championship round. UCLA and Arkansas are up next in the second elimination game. The Oklahoma City Thunder scored 32 points off turnovers and defeated the Pacers in Game 5 to take a 3-2 series lead. Jalen Williams on fire with 40 points. Game 6 back in Indianapolis Thursday, 5:30 tip on ABC. The Thunder have been set as 5.5-point favorites. Tyrese Halliburton has a strained right calf that was aggravated in last night's first quarter. He's scheduled to have an MRI. He finished with 4 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists on 0 for 6 shooting. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing is coming at you right now.
It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for men. Call 1-800-DIVORCE. Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Doing.
Wallace wide open. The right side angle 3 is on the way. Got another. Cha-ching at Thunder Money Ball. Cason Wallace having fun in Game 5 of the NBA Finals with 3 threes. Lugens down the lane on Nembhard. Sidesteps him, kicks to Dub, wide open, left wing 3 on the way. Cha-ching at Thunder Money Ball. Oh, that was nice. Shea blasting inside away from Nembhard. Shuttle feeds Dort. Right wing Dub, wide open, strokes a 3. In there. Cha-ching at Thunder Money Ball. Jalen Williams, 33 and counting. Thunder making shots, 98-93, 8 minutes to play. The Oklahoma City Thunder are 1 win away from their first ever NBA championship. For the first time in the finals, they lead the Pacers 3 victories to 2, a resounding Game 5 home court win, 120-109, as the Thunder have 2 shots to get 1 win to hoist their first ever NBA title.
Shohei Ohtani is on a big league bump. He's into his lineup, and his very first pitch as a Dodger is chopped foul by Fernando Tatis Jr. Strike 1 has us underway.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing starts now.
I'm not sure, but I think the Oregon State Beavers might be God's team. They once again looked lifeless going into the ninth inning, trailing 6-3, and the first 5 guys reach base, and they've tied the game up as they head now to the bottom of the ninth, and Louisville coming up to bat. Amazing. I mean, the Oregon State Beavers have a flair for the dramatic. It's just unfortunate they couldn't take the lead. They had every opportunity with the way they started out that inning, but they have at least evened up the game and have extended their season for the moment. So we'll see if they can complete the comeback and get the win. The winner of this game will go on to beat Coastal Carolina, and either Louisville or Oregon State would need back-to-back wins against Coastal to be able to move on to the championship round. And you've got UCLA and Arkansas that are coming up after this one. And those 2 also will meet in an elimination game. But what a dramatic ninth inning for the Beavs. It's amazing. This college baseball has been fantastic. I enjoyed the Women's College World Series with the softball. The baseball has been great. And the Oregon State Beavers' ability to bounce back after gut punch and put themselves in a position to win and advance is remarkable. So props to the Beavs. I'll keep you updated. And if things get exciting, we have Mike Parker on hand that we can go to take a listen to Doc. I mean, just a few minutes ago, he was near code blue. We thought, Shacker and I, that he was going to die. And now all of a sudden he has been revived and feels amazing because the Beavers have evened it up. So we'll keep you up to date with everything that's going on. The show today, Colin Amos from the law offices of Goldberg Jones. It's that time again. He's going to stop by in studio at 4:20 to answer your questions. And then at 5 o'clock, Sean Hyken, our Trailblazers insider from Rose Garden Report, will join me in studio to talk some basketball, coming off of Game 5 of the NBA Finals last night. Game 6 will be Thursday in Indianapolis. Once again, that's a 5:30 tip on ABC. And the Beavs or excuse me, the Beavs. I'm watching the Beavs, so I'm thinking the Beavs, but the Thunder have been set as a 5.5-point favorite. We have a Hops Ticket Tuesday. I'll have those coming up for you at 5 o'clock. So if you want to check out an upcoming Hops game and sit in the Rip City Radio Row, we have a 4-pack of Hops tickets for you, and we'll do those coming up at 5 o'clock. If you want to reach out to me, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number, 503-248-0620. You can find me on social at Chad and Rip City, at Chad and Rip City. And, of course, you can access us on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, pull up Rip City Radio 620, and we stream all of our local shows right there on YouTube. And you can stream and listen to the show and podcast it from our free iHeartRadio app. So, again, Sean Hyken in studio at 5. Colin Amos will stop by at 4:20. And right now the Beavs and Cardinals are in the ninth inning, bottom of the ninth. Louisville's up to bat. Game is tied up at 6 after a rally in the top of the ninth by the Beavs to score 3 runs and tie up the game. The cardiac pack is at it again. It's unbelievable. Like, they just won't die. The Oregon State Beavers are the ultimate cockroach. And, oh, by the way, yesterday we were talking about Shohei Ohtani. His first pitch in his first action, his Dodgers pitching debut, I think his first pitch checked in at about 98 miles per hour. I don't understand how you can be that good with the bat and then just step up to the mound and be like, yeah, I think I'll just throw some flames here. 98 miles per hour. But he only threw like 25 pitches. The Dodgers are going to handle him with kid gloves. They're going to bring him along slowly, very slowly. All right, the big news right now is Tyrese Halliburton. He's got a strained calf that was aggravated in last night's first quarter. And the NBA Finals now, the Thunder 1 win away from winning an NBA championship, which is pretty amazing. And I would think after watching that game last night and looking at the way the Thunder have played throughout the course of the season, through the regular season and up through the playoffs into the NBA Finals, I'm going to remember them for defense. And I know that we get caught up in teams, especially teams that appear to be really good. Can they go back-to-back? Is this a dynasty? I really don't care. All I know is that the 2025 Oklahoma City Thunder are super legit. Their point differential, they set an NBA record. Their defense is terrific. I like the way that they compete, and they've got the MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But they had plenty of help last night. Jalen Williams with 40 points, and he was doing it from all angles, from 3, off the bounce. He was attacking the rim. I mean, he was everywhere. He's got great length. He's got great athleticism. He's a very good shooter. And I think what we're watching right now with the Thunder, and we've seen this throughout the course of their playoff run in the Denver series and now in the NBA Finals against the Pacers, they're really emerging and growing up before our very eyes. You know, the big concern going into the postseason was that they didn't have the experience. They hadn't been there and done that. They hadn't gone through the normal, bumps in the road that teams do on their pathway to winning a championship. So the big concern was, would they be able to get over the hump? Would they be able to do it? Would they, when the pressure was on in a big-time moment, would they be able to get over and get the job done? And so far, they have answered the call at every turn. They have proven worthy. But I'm going to remember them for their defense. And I think last night was a perfect example because they've got it at all levels. But the pressure that they poured on in that game on the Pacers, it changed everything. It absolutely changed everything. Did you see the turnovers in that game? And keep in mind, Indiana throughout the course of the season, one of the best in the league at protecting the basketball. But last night, the Thunder forced 23 turnovers and scored 32 points off of those turnovers. For the game, they were plus 23 in points off turnovers. Now, look, if you're going to try and win a game, a second game at Oklahoma City against the Thunder, you cannot do so by turning it over like that. Because when you turn it over and their pressure gets the best of you, that's when they get out and run. That's when they get the easy buckets, and that's when they're able to really showcase their athleticism. But what I love about the Thunder is like the ball pressure. And I think you're looking at how a team needs to be constructed to win in today's NBA. Their ball pressure on the perimeter is immense. They're led by Lou Dort. They communicate extremely well. They're connected on a string. They rotate, and they're in the right position. And they've got multiple guys on the floor who can just come after you and attack. And they really don't have a weakness. defensively. So you have nowhere on the floor that you can look at and say, okay, we're going to go after that point right there, because they've got guys who can shut you down. So you've got the immense pressure on the perimeter. And then when you finally drive and get past the first wave of defense, you've got length like Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein waiting to reject shots. And we've talked about this before, but, great shot blockers, great length. Guys like Chet Holmgren, guys like Isaiah Hartenstein, what makes them so tough is they're always there. And even if they don't block a shot, what happens is that they're in a position to where they're changing shots. So they're changing shots. It doesn't go down on the stat sheet, but guys are thinking about the length. They're getting into position, and all of a sudden they've got to alter their shot because they see Chet Holmgren rotating over, or Isaiah Hartenstein. And those shots that might be good looks become misses because they feel the pressure. And then what happens is when you're facing that immense pressure on the perimeter from guys like Lou Dort, you tend to speed up your process, and when you're driving to the rim, you do so recklessly and not under control. And I just thought the Thunder in that fourth quarter of Game 4 and throughout the game last night, their pressure, they just turned up the intensity and turned up their process, and they made the Pacers uncomfortable. Now, the big issue right now for the Pacers is Tyrese Halliburton. Last night, he was not sharp. 4 points. He had 7 rebounds and 6 assists, but he was 0 of 6 shooting. He's not right. He wasn't right last night. You could see it with the way he was moving. He couldn't, get the space necessary to get his shot off. He didn't look comfortable. He was still battling, and I guess the bright side is the Thunder defense has to honor him and the fact that he's on the floor, but they've got real issues. And if he's not right and that calf continues to be a problem, they may have to seriously consider looking to go in a different direction. Maybe looking at, somebody else to fill those shoes. Maybe you've got to reduce the minutes that he plays. And I hate to see those type of injuries at this point in the season, but it's hard to have a guy out there on the floor who's compromised, especially when you're playing a team like Oklahoma City and you got to face that type of pressure. Now, if I had to guess, they're going back to Indianapolis. Game's on Thursday. The Pacers should play really well, and I think they've got a great chance to force a Game 7. But this all goes back to game number 4. I really thought whoever would win that game, whoever would win Game 4, would go on to win the series, because I didn't think that Indiana could win another game in Oklahoma City. Now, somehow, some way, they battled back and they cut the deficit to 2 late in the game, but then multiple turnovers led to easy buckets for the Thunder, and they quickly pushed the lead back out to double digits. I just don't think that Indiana can do what they need to do against that pressure defense from the Thunder to be able to execute and get the job done. But we'll see how things shake out. But respect to the Pacers. They have played extremely well. They have challenged the Thunder, but Oklahoma City is proving worthy with the way that they have attacked. All right, telephone number 503-248-0620. We got a 4-pack of tickets on Hops Ticket Tuesday coming up at 5. Sean Hyken in studio at 5. And right now the Beavers and Cardinals are battling in the bottom of the 9th, but the Beavers once again facing trouble. Louisville has 2 on and nobody out in the bottom of the 9th. If they score, it's over, and the Beavers are done. So I'll keep you up to date on that. I hope you're enjoying your Tuesday afternoon. What a beautiful day it is. Blue skies and sun with warm temperatures. Can't beat that. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing in your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, the Oregon State Beavers are facing more danger right now. Bottom of the ninth, Louisville's got the bases loaded with nobody out, and Oregon State has gone to the pen. They've brought in the freshman Zach Edwards, and he's got a pitcher's count right now at 1-2. His first pitch was 98 miles an hour, and now it's 2-2. Bases juiced. The Beavers trying to somehow once again avoid elimination. It's pretty crazy. Shacker, I do not need you to tell me what's going to happen because you've got the feed from Parker and you're ahead of the game right now. But apparently Zach Edwards, the freshman, comes in and gets a strikeout. Amazing. So there's one out, bases juiced, game tied up at 6, bottom of the ninth in Omaha. So I'll keep you up to date. It's been an exciting game. As you might expect from the Beavs, why do anything easy when you can stress everyone out and have the time of your life? Wild. All right, back to the NBA Finals. As I mentioned, Tyrese Halliburton is suffering from a strained calf. He did not look good last night. 0 for 6 shooting, 4 points, 7 boards, 6 assists. And after the game, he talked about playing through the injury.
I mean, it's NBA Finals. It's the finals, man. I've worked my whole life to be here, and I want to be out there to compete, help my teammates any way I can. I was not great tonight by any means, but, it's not really a thought of mine to not play here. If I can, walk, then I want to play. So, they understand that, and, is what it is, and, got to be ready to go for Game 6.
All right, there's Tyrese Halliburton. I respect the heck out of that because, he's a gamer, and he's led them on an incredible run throughout the course of the postseason, and he's really shown some big balls in clutch situations. He's on an all-time heater of a run when it comes to clutch plays, and he wants to be there for his team. Now, the one advantage of having him on the floor, or at least it was definitely the case last night, because he's a clutch player and you never know when a guy like that, even if he's not 100%, is going to rise up and hit a big shot, the Thunder defense had to respect him. They had to honor the fact that he was on the floor. And that opens the game up for everybody else. Now, Rick Carlisle, after the game, the Pacers head coach, discussed the injury.
He's not 100%. It's pretty clear. But I don't think he's going to miss the next game. And, we were concerned at halftime. And he insisted on playing. And I thought he made a lot of really good things happen in the second half. But he's not 100%, and there's a lot of guys in this series that aren't.
Well, Louisville has just ended the game. They got a sacrifice fly on the freshman Zach Edwards, and they win it 7-6. So Oregon State's phenomenal season and great run to Omaha, the College World Series, is now officially over. So they go through all that work in the top of the ninth, even up the game at 6, and now bow out to Louisville by a score of 7-6. So Louisville will move on. They'll face Coastal Carolina tomorrow. They need to win back-to-back games against Coastal Carolina to make it to the championship round. And UCLA and Arkansas will come up next from Omaha in an elimination game. So there you have it. The Beavers' run, an incredible season, is over. Well, that's not a good way to kick off the show. The Beavers gave me a nice little adrenaline pump there in the ninth inning, and now it's over. Brutal. Well, speaking of adrenaline push, we've seen it. The Pacers get a nice boost from the crowd. But Oklahoma City, that building is loud. They have great energy. The fans are completely geeked about everything that's going on right now. And Mark Daigneault talked about the fans and that energy from the home crowd, how it really helps to push them throughout the game.
I think the crowd puts the wind at our back. I always marvel at how enthusiastic and positive they remain in the ebbs and flows of a game or of a season. They're always trying to put the wind at our back. They're always trying to lift the team up. And I just think that's a great spirit that's on display in all these games. But they were amazing tonight, obviously.
Yeah, it was loud. And it's going to be tough. I mean, they are a very good home team. And that's to be expected. When you have a young team, and the Thunder are, a very young team. I think the youngest in the NBA. A lot of young players, they respond better to being at home. The emotion and energy from the crowd, the role players play a lot better. Guys who are young and with that type of athleticism, they feed off of that type of energy. And it's been like that throughout the entire postseason. The Thunder are really tough to beat at home. And then with their defense and the pressure defense and the turnovers they create, they're able to get out and create a bunch of easy buckets. And they never stop. They just keep coming. And that's what makes them so tough is the fact that they have so many different guys who can defend. I love two-way players, and the Thunder have a slew of them. You know, guys on the floor who are committed to playing on both ends. And the Pacers and Thunder are the same way. Mark Daigneault with the Thunder, Rick Carlisle with the Pacers. They have gotten their guys to buy in and do it both ways. Now, another big-time player for the Thunder, you know, kind of the elder statesman of that squad, and that's Alex Caruso. His defense, his playmaking, he didn't shoot the ball as well last night, but he's been a big shot maker for them. He's kind of the captain of that bench squad. He's won a championship. He's got experience. The younger guys look to him, and he kind of sets the pace for them. And the legit players, Jalen Williams and Shea Gilgeous and the rest, they all respect him. But Alex Caruso is doing a heck of a job. And what an acquisition that was, along with Isaiah Hartenstein. But Shea Gilgeous, after the game, talked about Caruso and his experience and the way that it helps his team.
I've talked to Caruso about how he's grown into his veteran voice, being a leader on this team. How vital has his voice been, not just heading back into Indiana, but throughout this whole playoff process?
Yeah, he's the only one on the team with a ring. He knows what it takes. He's been there before. He's won 16 games in a playoff run, so he knows what it takes. And when he speaks, everyone listens. And also, like, what he brings to the game, like, you have no choice but to listen. Like, a guy like that leads by example, not only leading with his voice, and does everything to make the team better selfishly. And I mean, selflessly, is you have no choice but to listen to a guy like that when he speaks.
That's pretty awesome. You know, Shea Gilgeous giving the tip of the cap to Alex Caruso. So Game 6 coming up on Thursday. We'll wait and see what the report is on the MRI with the strained right calf with Tyrese Halliburton. But I'll tell you what, the Pacers can definitely force a Game 7. And that's what I want. I want drama. I want Game 7s. Game 7s are ones that you remember. And a couple that come off right off the top of my mind. The 1988 NBA Finals, Lakers and Pistons from the Forum in Inglewood, California. The Lakers won it by 3. Unfortunately, like Tyrese Halliburton, Isaiah Thomas had that horrific ankle injury in Game 6. And then right after the ankle injury in Game 6, he scored 25 points in the third quarter. The Lakers won that game by a point on a phantom foul call on Bill Laimbeer, who was defending Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And Kareem hit both free throws, game over. They went to Game 7. But unfortunately, Isaiah Thomas was nowhere near 100% with the ankle injury. So Vinnie Johnson had to play the majority of minutes at point guard. The Pistons nearly able to come back. Laimbeer hit a 3 to cut it to 1 with seconds on the clock, but AC Green hit a layup with a couple of seconds remaining, and they win it 108 to 105. That one stands out. 2010, Lakers and Celtics. Ron Artest or Meta World Peace hit that ridiculous 3 after Kobe passed it to him. And the Lakers go on to win the championship. They make it back-to-back. And Kobe able to avenge the loss 2 years prior to the Celtics when Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, KG got the win in Powell and Kobe's first trip to the finals. That one stands out. Game 7, Knicks and Rockets from Houston. Hakeem against Patrick Ewing. And you had John Starks who went ice cold. The Rockets won back-to-back games at home, 6 and 7 to win the championship. You know, the Game 7s are very memorable. And, of course, don't forget about the 2016 NBA Finals with the Warriors and Cavaliers. LeBron, Kyrie got the job done on the road at the Coliseum in Oakland over the Warriors. The 73-win Warriors when Kyrie hit that ridiculous 3 over Steph and silenced the building. I was in the building for that one. And it went dead silent. And Warrior fans were gripping. You had the great block from LeBron. You had the great shot from Kyrie. That was the series where Draymond got ejected for kicking LeBron in the balls. The injury to Andrew Bogut. You know, the Warriors looked like they were in control, and they lost 3 straight games in the series. They lose it in 7, and it's over. But the Game 7s are the ones you remember. And that's what I'm hoping for. If you're just joining me here on the Rip City Drive, the Oregon State Beavers got beat. They give up a run in the bottom of the ninth, and they lose 7-6 to Louisville. And it ends a remarkable run to Omaha. The first trip to Omaha for Mitch Canham as manager of the Beavs. But I think it's important to remember what the Beavs were able to accomplish this year. And it all goes back to having no conference to play in, being left on their own along with Washington State, and the Beavers being a ridiculously good program decided to go independent, and they were able to piece together a schedule, but the majority of their games were on the road, but it allowed them to get the competition level to the point where they got respect to get a good bid into the tournament, and then they were able to grind and fight their way in. Now, the key is they didn't lose anyone of consequence, a difference maker in the portal, and Mitch Canham got these guys to believe. And then late in the season, they started to put things together, and they made the great run to Omaha and had the terrific Game 1 comeback win over Florida State. And they won that series in the Super Regional in 3 games. They had to pull off some heroics in the regional. But they are a terrific baseball program. Oregon State is a baseball school, one of the best programs in the country, and they've got great support from people within the program. And they're able to keep it together. And it was just fun to watch. So you got to give major props to Mitch Canham and his crew and for the work that they were able to put together. And the Beavers were a lot of fun to watch. And I've got to tell you, I've watched college baseball before. I've seen the previous runs by the Beavs, which has been fun. But I watched more college baseball this year than I have in recent years. It's a very good product. Both the women and the men, great product. Very watchable. Good television product. And I just wish the Beavs could have gotten at least in a position to face Coastal Carolina again to see if they would have had a chance to get to the championship series. UCLA and Arkansas coming up next, and then we'll see who's able to advance and move on to the championship round. But no shame in what the Beavs were able to pull off. They didn't get over the hump and get to the championship series, but that was one heck of a run. But again, to do it the way they did it, by playing all those road games and not having a conference and deciding, screw it, we'll go independent. I mean, tip of the cap to Mitch Canham and company. But that was a brutal loss because they were down 6-3 going into the ninth. They put up 3 runs. The first 5 guys reached base. You even up the score, and then Louisville is able to load up the bases and get a run across the plate to win it with a sacrifice fly. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. And Omaha is, along with Oklahoma City, I would like to go check out both the College World Series and the Women's College World Series because both locations are great. Oklahoma City for the women, Omaha for the men, and just looks like a good time. And I'm all about, checking out different sports venues or checking out different places. But from the people I've talked to, and Kerry Eggers was on the show recently and said Omaha with the setup and the way they got everything done and the press setup, Omaha was his fave. He loved it, and he's covered everything. All right, Rip City Drive, Chad doing with you. Sean Heiken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, will join me in studio at 5. We'll talk NBA Finals. We'll continue to take a look around the NBA and focus on some of the rumors as we near the NBA draft. It's coming up a week from tomorrow. And just a reminder to each and every one of you, this is what's going on a week from tomorrow. The Trailblazers are going to have a block party, Blazers Block Party Draft Edition. It's going to be right there on the Rose Quarter campus. The draft day is June 25th. That's a week from tomorrow. We're going to kick things off with our coverage at 3 with the Rip City Drive. That will go 3 to 4:30. And then Travis Demers and Francis Williams will take over and anchor the draft coverage starting at 4:30. All the way through the first round and through Joe Cronin's press conference, the Blazers will be selecting number 11. Now, I was able to put together a sweet prize pack. So if you stop by the Rose Quarter campus, and I think we're going to be broadcasting inside of Dr. Jack's, if you stop by the Rose Quarter campus, you can enter to win a Trailblazers prize pack. We've got a Scoot Henderson autographed authentic jersey, 4 Coors Light silver seats to an upcoming Trailblazers game this season, and an autographed Trailblazers pennant. Now, the Silver Seats is its own little area where you get the big cushy seats. It's got the cold rail technology for your Coors Light and a little place to plug in and charge your cell phone. I've sat there for a game before. It's a great setup, the Coors Light Silver Seats. So that prize pack, you can stop by. We'll have a little QR code you can enter for your chance to win the prize pack on Wednesday, a week from tomorrow on June 25th over at the Rose Quarter campus. The Trailblazers will have DJ OG1 out there bumping music. There's going to be face painters on hand to take care of your grill. You can get some pinwheels. You know, Blazer fans can rep their squad. They're going to have some blow-up games out there, Pop a Shot, Connect 4. There's going to be fan photo opportunities. And then there'll be sampling inside of Dr. Jack's with Michelob Ultra, Coors, Hop Valley, and 19 Acres. So that's what's going on with our draft coverage. It will kick off at 3. We'll be over at Dr. Jack's, and the Trailblazers will have their block party draft edition from the Rose Quarter campus. So you might as well head on over and enjoy it. And I was looking at the forecast. I'm not sure what's going on, but we got like this weird rain situation coming in on Friday, and I think it's Saturday, and then things will clear up again. Yeah, so we got temperatures tomorrow, 71 and partly sunny. Thursday is going to be 72 and partly sunny. And then Friday and Saturday, temperatures dip back down to 59. We're going to have rain on both days, but then the weather kicks back up into high gear on Sunday. 72, partly sunny. Monday, 82. Tuesday, 85. And then Wednesday, the 25th, which is draft night. Clear skies, sun, and temperatures at around 82 degrees. That right there is perfection. That means it's going to be a good weather day for the block party, so come out and join us. All right, here's what we got coming up. So Colin Amos, my man from Goldberg Jones, 1-800-DIVORCE. He's going to stop by at 4:20 to answer your questions. Sean Hyken will stop by in studio at 5, and then we have the Trailblazers, the Hops Ticket Tuesday. I've got a 4-pack of tickets for the Hops where you can sit in the Rip City Radio row. We'll give those away at 5. Louisville 7, Oregon State 6 as the Beavers run in the College World Series comes to an end. We'll keep things rolling. Hope you're enjoying your Tuesday. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio.
2-1 the count. The winning run, Alex Alicea, whose error contributed to the Beavers rally in the top of the inning. The winning run at third. Lucas Moore at second. Matt Klein at first. The 2-1 pitch, and this will do it. A fly ball to center. Cannon Reeder goes back. Reeder makes the catch. Alicea tags on his way to the plate. He scores, and Louisville walks off the Beavers on the sacrifice fly to center field. 7-6 in the bottom of the ninth inning as they return the favor, and the Beavers' gritty, competitive, thrilling, exciting 2025 season that they fought all the way to the end on comes to a bitterly disappointing end. Louisville 7, the Beavers 6, but what a year for the Beavers, who battled the toughest schedule in America, the toughest schedule in program history. 5 elimination games coming in, down to their last 3 outs in the ninth inning today. Fought back to tie, not able to forge the lead, and they end up paying for that as Louisville wins it 7-6. And the Beaver season comes to an end in the College World Series.
Well, props to Mike Parker. He was a little more upbeat with that final call than what I anticipated in my mind. But with the end of that game and the Beavers going home now, we got to wait another 2.5 months for more of Mike Parker. That's unfortunate because we love Mike for obvious reasons.
Oh, my goodness. This is a waste of humanity's time. Yeah. That ball's foul, Jim.
By 10 feet.
Yeah, I mean, that ball, what?
By 10.
Are they asking for, are Cincinnati asking for that to be looked at? Is that the deal? Travis, it's a good question. It's an important question. And I believe we're moving towards an answer, closure to that question and that issue.
And he ought to be teed up! Terrible call!
Overton front court to Thomas, and Isaiah bumped on the way up. Oh, and they're counting the basket. He's counting the basket.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding?
Terrible call!
Isaiah Thomas to the line with an NBA continuation call. They count the
Fantasy horse collared at the 8, yes!
We'll get this tailgate going early with a Go Beavs. Very good. Very good. Very good. Very good. Oh, my goodness. This is a waste of humanity's time.
When I die, I really want to be buried with the tapes of Mike Parker. I want every call that Parker has ever had where he loses his cool. Like this, when he starts punching Jim Wilson.
Fantasy horse collared at the 8, yes!
I've made the decision right now that I'd like to be buried with all of the tapes of Mike Parker because he's a beautiful man. And anyone that has the ability to freak out and then all of a sudden go right back into the sultry tones and be a broadcaster is amazing to me. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Oh, my goodness. This is a waste of humanity's time.
I love Mike Parker. He was good there. He didn't lose his cool. He didn't sound too depressed. But I feel bad for him, man. Like, he bleeds orange, and I respect that. But I do. I want to be bare with the tapes. And if someone wants to bring some audio equipment to play Mike Parker's calls as my eulogy is being given, I'd be cool with that. To celebrate one of the all-time great voices, Mike Parker. Because I like guys with emotion. I don't want you to be buttoned up. And that's why Mike Parker, going into this, very professional mode over the last few years when he's tried to, control himself and somehow master the broadcasting demons inside, it's not the same. It's like, come on, Mike, just let it go. So I'm hoping before he retires that he's like, okay, for my final year, I'm going to take off all of the training wheels and every device that I've used to try and control myself and just go hog wild. That would make the world a better place. Mike Parker going crazy and being himself makes the world a better place. I know you all agree with that, too.
Terrible call! Fantasy horse collared at the 8, yes!
And he ought to be teed up!
Overton front court to Thomas, and Isaiah bumped on the way up.
Oh, and they're counting the basket! He's counting the basket!
Oh, my goodness. This is a waste of humanity's time.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding?
I don't think they're kidding, Mike.
And he ought to be teed up!
Very good. Isaiah Thomas to the line with an NBA continuation call. They count the basket to put the Huskies up 66-58.
Oh, I love that so much. All right, there you go. 7-6 the final. Louisville gets the win over Oregon State. And suddenly I lost a lot of interest in the College World Series. It's amazing how that happens. We got the Stanley Cup Finals coming up tonight. Florida likely to get the win and punk Canada once again because the Cup will stay in the States. That drives the Canadian fans crazy. But Florida, tough. They dropped game one. They've been able to bounce back. They've got a powerful offense. I would expect Florida to win tonight. But if they want to give us a game 7, can the Pacers win that game 6? Like if Halliburton's not 100%, can they find a way to get over and force a game 7 on Sunday? Like I feel like we need that, right? I want a game 7, and I'm sure you do too. So come on, Indiana, don't let us down. But I have a feeling that like if Halliburton's not 100%, or if he doesn't play because of the strained calf, or if he's out there hobbling around, I just have a feeling that they might cave at home. Man, that Thunder defense last night was just immense. And none of that, but how do you cough it up? How do you give up 32 points off turnovers in the NBA Finals? Like, seriously, like, what's up with that? For a team that doesn't even turn it over. That's the big problem. And even with all that, they still got themselves back in the game in the fourth quarter. But even when they cut it to 2, I was just waiting for the bottom to fall out. And that's exactly what happened. Who was it, Neesmith or Mathurin? It was like as soon as they cut it to 2, they gave up another slew of turnovers, and the Thunder capitalized on each and every one of them. I don't care what happens. I just don't want to see Scott Foster again. I do not want to be buried with Scott Foster's whistle. I would like to be buried with Mike Parker's calls, all of his greatest hits, but I do not want to be buried with Scott Foster's whistle. And he'll probably be in Game 7. The NBA will find a way to squeeze him in. They might even give him a little Texas two-step. Hey, Scotty, you want to do Game 6 and 7? Why don't you jump in there, buddy? You're a company guy. You're the extender. I can tell you one thing. If Scott Foster's on the call Thursday, I can guarantee it's going 7. He always finds a way to get the job done. Like when Skeletor, Adam Silver, calls up Scott Foster, Satan answers the phone. He's like, what can I do for you, boss? Satan, we need you to extend the series. It would be very beneficial to have a 7th game, a Game 7. I know that it's only Oklahoma City and Indiana, and we're going to have low TV ratings, but we need a boost. We need a Game 7. Don't worry, I got you. And then Scott Foster flies in, amps up the drama, brings all the drama, the acting, everything that he does. You know, it's annoying. He loses control of the game. They'll allow guys to grip for fouls, and then before you know it, we got a Game 7. So come to think of it, I'm in favor. Put Scott Foster in Game 6 because I guarantee you we'll get a Game 7. I'm not down with Scott Foster. Not down. And I know that the NBA says he's a highly rated official, but like I've told you about NBA officiating before, you have to work off the assumption that the officiating is going to be crappy every night because it is. And then you're not going to be like beside yourself when you see the stuff that's going on out there. Like Scott Foster in Game 4. Here, I'm going to bring out the drama. I'm going to be like the ump with the, with all the accentuation on the strike call. Street. He's like Enrico Palazzo from Naked Gun. He puts on the drama, gets up at people's grills, wants to become a part of the show. He's everything you don't want in an official. And he's punked Portland many a times in the past. Thanks a lot, Scotty. All right, we'll keep things rolling. When we come back, I want to share a snippet of something that Dave Deckard shared in regard to the upcoming draft with the Blazers selecting at 11. He talked about a few of the prospects, so I'll share that with you next. And then Colin Amos is going to answer your questions from the law offices of Goldberg Jones at 4:20. And then my man Sean Hiking going to join me in the studio at 5. The end of Mike Parker's season. That's where we're at. 503-248-0620. You got the Rip City Drive. With Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, 4 o'clock. What's up, my friends? We start in Omaha.
2-1 the count. The winning run, Alex Alicea, whose error contributed to the Beavers rally in the top of the inning. The winning run at third. Lucas Moore at second. Matt Klein at first. The 2-1 pitch, and this will do it. A fly ball to center. Cannon Reeder goes back. Reeder makes the catch. Alicea tags on his way to the plate. He scores, and Louisville walks off the Beavers on the sacrifice fly to center field.
7-6 the final. Louisville will move on to face Coastal Carolina. They have to win back-to-back games to advance to the championship round. UCLA and Arkansas are up next in the second elimination game. Game 6 NBA Finals in Indy Thursday, 5:30 tip on ABC. Thunder a 5.5-point favorite. Tyrese Halliburton has a strained right calf that was aggravated in last night's first quarter. He's scheduled to have an MRI. He finished the game with 4 points, 7 boards, and 6 assists on 0 for 6 shooting. All right, I got the text from Colin Amos, my good friend from the law offices of Goldberg Jones, is on his way out to the station. He'll be here coming up at 4:20 to answer your questions. And then at 5 o'clock, Sean Heiken going to stop by in studio. And we'll focus in on the Trailblazers, the NBA Finals, the upcoming draft, which is a week from tomorrow. We got a nice setup where the Trailblazers are going to be putting together a block party draft edition. June 25th, Rose Quarter Campus, a week from tomorrow. The Blazers will have on hand DJ OG1. They'll have face painters to get your grill all trailblazery. They're going to have some games on site. Papa Shot Connect 4. The Rip City Remix will be on hand. Photo opportunities for the fans. Sampling inside of Dr. Jack's Michelob Ultra. Coors, Hop Valley, and 19 Acres. And our coverage will start at 3. We're going to be right there at the Rose Quarter, Dr. Jack's. From 3 until 4:30, the Rip City Drive. Sean Heiken, Chris Burkhardt, and company. From 3 to 4:30. And then starting at 4:30, Travis Demers and Francis Williams will anchor the draft coverage throughout the entire first round and into Joe Cronin's press conference. We also have a prize pack, which is going to be nice. 4 Coors Light Silver seats to an upcoming game this year. So you can sit in your own area with the cushy seats and the Cold-Rail technology to keep your drinks cold, and phone chargers. An autographed, authentic Trailblazers Scoot Henderson jersey and an autographed Trailblazers pennant. There you have it. That's what's going on over at the Rose Quarter campus a week from tomorrow, with our coverage starting at 3 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, speaking of the draft, I want you to hear this from Dave Decker, BlazersEdge.com. He joined me a couple of days ago, and the question was very simple. What's the main objective? What are the Trailblazers trying to accomplish on draft night? And here's what Dave Deckard had to say.
Obviously, it's to use that number 11 pick well. And there can be a couple options for that. Do you want a player who is speculative? I mean, there's guys like, if he falls, I really kind of like Kaman Malwatch from Duke. He's a center. He's super athletic, which fits the Blazers profile. You also have a guy like, what's his name? Igor Demine from BYU, who is a 6'8" forward, which the Blazers have a few of, but he can also make plays. He'd be an interesting analog to Denny Avdia. So you have guys like that you can take a flyer on at number 11 that you wouldn't feel secure on using the third pick on, but those would be great picks. You also have a guy like Carter Bryant, who's more ready-made. He's from Arizona. He's a shooter, and he can also play defense, which absolutely fits their need and profile. So there's a guy like that. I think there are going to be options at that 11 pick. But, for instance, there are players who look good right now. Derek Queen is one of those that's been linked with Portland, and he's a big player. He's a center, and he's got skills, but he's probably not mobile and not a defender, which means for me he's a red flag. And if that's the best guy that's available at 11, why would you not trade down, get a guy that you can take a flyer on, like one of the players we mentioned, if they fall that far, and get a little extra return and let someone else use that 11 pick. So I think that there's two basic options that they have. Take a home run swing at 11 or trade down and take a more secure swing lower and get some dividend back. I think either one of those I would be happy with, and those would be smart. I don't think it's good to draft for need at 11. I don't think they're going to find a player who changes their team in this draft at 11. I think that basically they have to go big or kind of go home and see what extra they can get out of it.
There you go. Dave Deckard from BlazersEdge.com. So there are definitely options. The other thing that Dave talked about was, he doesn't expect anything major to happen trade-wise. The way he looks at the market right now, with particularly Anthony Simons, Jeremy Grant, and DeAndre Ayton, he doesn't think there's going to be value on the market for those players. So the Blazers would probably be better off holding on to those guys going into next year. And then I talked to somebody else that I respect last night, and they had the same sentiment, that they don't expect that if they had to, choose which they thought would happen, the Blazers, getting busy and making any significant moves, or the roster being pretty much as we see it today going into the start of next year, what would they choose? And they said, hey, based on the way things look right now, I would expect them to come back as is. Now, I think I mentioned this. I think if I had to rank the order of importance, I think Jeremy Grant, moving him would be at the top of my priority list. Now, there's no urgency. The Blazers don't have to do it right now. The reason why I would see that as an urgent maneuver is because of the play of Tamani Kamara and Denny Avdia. The Blazers are at their best when those two guys are on the floor together. And if Grant is still on the roster, how does that work? Because Grant has 3 years remaining on his deal at big money. He's a vet. You're not going to start Grant? Seriously, would Chauncey Billups sit Grant on the bench and start Tamani and Denny? There are some locker room dynamics there. It's just a weird situation. You've got to find a way to clear out the space to get those guys on the floor. But at the same time, there's no urgency or pressure to make a deal right now. The other thing, too, about Grant, with the 3 years and the larger annual salary left on the deal, the Blazers don't want to make a move and take a loss. They don't want to give up assets to get rid of a player. That doesn't make any sense. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the Blazers I do not believe they're going to make a move and attach assets to Jeremy Grant just to move him somewhere else. Why? Why would you do that? They're not going to do that. So if the market's not there and the Blazers can't get the value they believe Grant is worth in return, he'll be on the roster when the season begins. And then you've got the other situation with Anthony Simons. I wish that they could deal him like the Grizzlies did Desmond Bane to the Magic and get multiple picks in return and a couple of players. The difference between Bane and Anthony Simons, and Dave pointed this out, Simons' numbers have come down just a little bit, but the big difference between the two guys is Bane's a two-way player and Simons is not. He's an offensive guy and a great scorer, but not a defensive stopper. And Desmond Bane can play both ways. And I like the way the NBA is turning now, where there's an extra premium on guys who can play both ways. Guys who can defend, guys who can be aggressive. And I just wonder, hey, look, I know the Pacers are a different level of talent than the Blazers and a number of other teams in the NBA. But I wonder, look at what the Magic did. They went out and got Desmond Bane. They've got Paolo Banchero. They've got, Wagner, the two Wagners. They have a good squad. They have some talent, but they don't have they don't have big time superstars. I wonder if they look at the East and say, hey, if we have a roster full of versatile guys with length, we can go out and compete and be defensive minded in a wide open Eastern Conference. I think with the way the Pacers have played, maybe the Blazers can look at their roster and say, hey, we'll just continue to load up on versatile wings with great length who can play both ways. And we're going to become more and more defensive-minded. And it was one of the big reasons why I was a proponent of Chauncey Billups coming back, because you've got an improving defensive ball club. You've got some young and willing defenders that are on the roster right now. Good shot blocker in Klingon. Great defensive player in Tamani Kamara, one of the best in the NBA. Denny Avdi is a two-way player. You see, you become more defensive-minded, and you've got the same coach with the same system, and so they can continue to build upon that with the young guys. So you continue to reinforce the foundation that's been laid. So the guys know where they're supposed to be, they know what's expected of them, and they can continue to grow in that. I think that's a good thing. Instead of new coaching staff, new system, and, trying to learn new things. So that can be tough. Very difficult. But that's what it comes down to. So that's where we're at. So the Blazers coming up on next Wednesday, we'll have the number 11 pick. And based on everyone I've talked to, there's always that sleeper in the draft, someone that, pops up that you don't expect that becomes a star. But more than likely, you're not going to get that big-time difference maker at 11. You can get a contributor and someone that can be a valuable member of the squad, but it's unlikely that you'll find the big-time difference maker. I think the other big names to keep an eye on, Kevin Durant's right at the top of the list. We know he's going to go somewhere. The question is where. Is it going to be Miami? Would it be San Antonio? Could it be the Houston Rockets? I think Kevin Durant is going to be on the move. The question is, what's the price tag going to be? I think we'll have to wait and see. All right, we have, Hops Ticket Tuesday. We got some baseball tickets. I'll give those away coming up at 5. Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, is going to join us in studio at 5. And we'll talk about the NBA Finals, and we'll continue to see what he's hearing in regard to the draft. And I will ask him about, changes, because it feels like there may not be anything major, and that's only because the Blazers are not going to give up. They're not going to do something, I think the way Hyken put it was, a net negative, meaning you give up an asset and attach a pick to it just to get rid of it. They're not going to do that. All right, Colin Amos from the law offices of Goldberg Jones, 1-800-DIVORCE. He's going to join me in studio next. He answers your questions each month, and will point you in the right direction. Look, the bottom line is, if you're facing a divorce or custody issue, or if you're thinking about getting married and you need a prenuptial agreement, you call 1-800-DIVORCE, and Colin will answer all of your questions at no charge. And in most cases, you find out you don't need an attorney, but if you do, he will give you all the details on what needs to be done. Louisville over Oregon State, 7-6 today, ending the Beavers run in Omaha. And now Louisville will move on and face Coastal Carolina. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, always a pleasure to welcome my good friend from the law offices of Goldberg Jones Divorce Men, Colin Amos, in studio. All right, so we just saw the U.S. Open out at Oakmont in Pennsylvania, and you were recently at, what was the tournament you were at?
It was the one Harbor Point, the RBC.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about the RBC because I know that the conditions at the RBC were not the same as Oakmont, where the U.S. Open is so tough. But what did you notice as you were walking around a course that was getting ready for play from the pros? Like, did you notice, like, course conditions or the rough or anything that jumped out about how challenging it might be?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you have those kind of courses, they do get it ready. The greens are faster.
Yeah.
They maybe don't water. Remember, the U.S. Open was up north here outside of Seattle, down in the Tacoma area. People were complaining because they didn't water those greens, and you couldn't keep a ball on the green.
Yeah.
And then of course, the U.S. Open, which I didn't get to watch the last of it when it was raining.
Yeah.
Talk about brutal conditions for a U.S. Open.
And then for Spawn to go out, bogey 5 of his first 6 holes. They get the rain delay, and then he comes back and somehow miraculous finish, birdies the final 2, has a great drive on 17, makes the putt, wins the U.S. Open, the only player to finish under par, and he really conquered a beast of a course.
The question I had, because I had golfed with Sam Burns when we played at the RBC.
And he played extremely well.
He did, but he had that casual water where they made a ruling. And
so much BS.
Yes. And so I just feel bad. So I kind of put an asterisk next to Spawn that says, did you really win the U.S. Open, or did you just get lucky on a crazy day where everybody else just had tough conditions?
Boy, golf, the USGA, I was talking with my golf pro, PGA Dave, who was on the show a couple of days ago talking about the U.S. Open, and he said that of all the organizations, the USGA are the biggest sticklers in terms of their rule book. When I saw where he was at and what the lie was, I was like, yeah, you've got to give him relief from
casual water.
It's casual water.
And when I was at that tournament, I played golf. Who texted right after that, and he had been a caddy for 17 years on the tour, the Masters and the Opens and the British and all that stuff, and he was losing his mind that they wouldn't give him casual water. And he brought up the boulder that was behind Tiger Woods' ball, and all those officials were like, yeah, we want Tiger to win, so yeah, you can move your ball because there's a pebble right there. And here he's sitting in a puddle, and nope, it's not casual water. So yeah. That was a weird day. I felt bad for everybody out there, except for Spawn, obviously, who won.
I couldn't believe that they didn't give him relief. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so much bullcrap.
Yeah.
There are a couple of rules that drive me insane. Like, I think it's absurd that you have to hit your ball out of another person's divot in the middle of the fairway.
They should. That's an easy one to amend. That would, I would. I'd never do that. And all my buddies, we kind of have a little bit of a rule on that one. It's like, come on, we're out here for fun. That is just unfair to be in this big divot, especially if they didn't repair it.
Now, the guys I've talked to as to why they don't change that is it's pretty simple. They said because the pros are in a tournament playing for big money, then all of a sudden you get all these questions about, hey, my ball's in a divot. And then you have this whole idea of what's a divot, right?
Yeah.
We all know what a divot is. It's when someone takes a big chunk out of the ground, it's not repaired, and your ball's sitting down into that divot. It's really hard to hit out of that. We've seen, players suffer because of that type of lie.
Yeah.
But I think it's ridiculous. But yeah, I could not believe their ruling on that water.
Yeah.
It was so obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. But, there he goes. Spawn was not crying about it.
No, Spawn just went out there and somehow gutted. I think that's what I respected most is that I like, and it doesn't have to be athletes, Colin. I admire people, and you probably know people like this in your life that can face adversity or challenges, or they seem to get a bunch of bad breaks like Spawn did, and yet they bounce back and find a way to overcome. Like, I love those type of players.
Yeah.
And so the way he grinded through with all the gut checks to come back and win, like, I was like, tip of the cap to that guy.
Yeah, I heard this when I was young, and I coached my kids growing up, and you met Tanner. He came into the studio a long time ago, but I always told them the same thing, which always made sense to go to your point, which is, okay, we're out here, and it's cold, and it's rainy, it's wet, and all these kids are whining. And I just said, listen, do you see the other team? Are they out here also? They're playing in the same conditions. Everybody's here. So you can either choose to let the conditions control how you handle your day and your game and your attitude, or you can be tougher than the other team because they're playing in the same way. And so, it it made sense to me. Some of the kids are like, no, it's still cold. They were whining about it. But same idea, to muscle up and get your brain in the right place and saying everybody else is here. I'm not getting any special treatment. I'm going to attack this day and to attack this game.
Yeah, I would say probably one of the most satisfying rounds of golf. It was a couple of weeks ago, and hole one, I opened up with a triple bogey because my ball had hit the top lip of the bunker, but the ball got stuck like below the lip and right at the top, so in like some fescue, right? So there's like no way I can pop it up out of that on the green.
Right.
So I knew I was going to swing and hit the ball, and I was going to roll back into the bunker. And so I ended up taking a triple on a par 5, and I was super bitter. But I thought, you know what? Let's just one hole. There's 17 more to go.
Right.
So I took a couple of breaths and just continued to move on. And I ended up with a 79 that day. Not my best score, but the fact that I was able to break 80 after a ridiculous start. That mentally,
there's so many people out here listening to you going 79. Are you kidding? I would kill for that.
But that was because I'm not exactly Tiger Woods. I have to be careful because, mentally I can get down on myself, right? Because in my mind I'm not thinking, oh, I'll get it back on the next one. I'm like, great, that's going to start the avalanche of mistakes, and then I start thinking too much.
Yeah, my problem is, and you don't have this problem. I got to be careful if I drink because then I just don't keep my focus up, and then I lose control of my game pretty quick. And I like to play golf, and so sometimes I'm like, I have to make that choice. Okay, I'm going to drink, and I'm going to just not worry too much about it. I still play, and I'm not like out of my mind, and I'll get wasted. But if I really want to have a good game, I have to stay away and keep my focus because you have to focus if you really want a good score.
Yeah, it occurred to me one morning that people go to the golf course for different reasons, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like 7:30 in the morning. We're a couple of holes in, and this guy that we're playing with, super nice guy, he opens up the side of his golf bag, and he pops out a couple of IPAs. Like, I don't know how big the cans were, but they weren't 12 ounces. They were monstrous. And he's like, hey, would you like one? I'm like, no, dude, I'm good. And
7:30 in the morning.
Yeah, because he's,
that's
in
his
the middle.
day.
He's got a couple of days off, and he's like, I'm going to enjoy myself. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then every once in a while, I'll be playing with someone. They'll disappear, and I'm like, they must have had to take a leak, so they duck behind a tree or whatever. And then I see like this puff of smoke, and I'm like, oh, he's out there for different reasons too.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love that. Now, I thought about you the other day because I was getting ready to play with a buddy of mine, and I don't want to give up any names because I don't want anyone to be incriminated here. But I hadn't seen him in a while, and we started talking, and he's like, yeah, I caught my wife cheating on me. And I'm like, what? I was like, what? And I know these people pretty well. So I was stunned.
Yeah.
And so we started talking, and I'm like, how did you find out? And he's like, text messages. And so the first person I thought of was like, I wonder how many times Colin Amos has heard that. Like, how often does that kind of stuff go on where the text messages or something, someone finds out, and that starts to derail into divorce?
It happens all the time. Text messages. I had the old classic today. Just came home and he had let his buddy who needed a place to stay, his wife sleeping with his best friend, and it just happens all the time. Now I don't know if that's certainly something that triggers it, but there are problems below that that happened well before that, but happens all the time. Social media, again, pictures, text messages, which is why people are going to WhatsApp and all these other ways to kind of hide your communications. But, it's the state of the nation.
Well, the first thing I told him was, I said, well, Colin Amos, 1-800-DIVORCE. He's like, I've already called him. I'm like, good.
Yeah, I've spoken with a few of your listeners as well as friends. And
I think every friend I know has now called you at least once or twice.
There's some that are more than twice because, like we talk about, I have no problem answering questions and talking about it. And most don't need a full consultation. I mean, we charge for an hour. It's only $200, but most people just need, hey, I have this question or this issue, or I'm going through this thing. And I'm happy to speak with anybody, and it doesn't have to be a friend of the show.
That's what I'm talking about. So, like, my buddy, he was telling me some stuff because he's going through the divorce. And I know he had talked to initially, and I was like, I didn't like what I was hearing. I was like, look, just do me a favor. Before you sign anything, will you please call Colin to make sure? Just make sure.
Yeah.
And he goes, yes. And he did. And so I felt much better after that. So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
I just defer to Colin Amos. I'm like, dude, 1-800-DIVORCE. Call him now.
Yeah.
Please don't screw this up, all right?
I hate when my friends call me and they say, "Hey, I got to ask you a question." I'm like, "No, no," and they're like, "No, it's not about that." I'm like, "Okay," or it is about that. So,
No, it's pretty funny you mentioned that because Dwight James, I play golf with his wife, and we got another tournament coming up. But, she's a doctor, and she stepped away from her practice, and she's now counseling. But, I know we were warming up on the range, getting ready for a practice round. And she had told me that she hates it when she's out there focused on her game. She'll get these women to roll up and start asking questions. And she has to tell them, like, hey, call me later today.
Yeah.
I'm
I have
getting ready to play
office
golf.
hours. I have office hours. I don't mind. I can talk about it. I get out to bars, and anyway, everybody has an issue or a question or a friend or their situation. I can talk about it all night long, all day long. It's just fine with me. It doesn't bother me at all.
That's cool. And it comes with the territory. Like, people are like, oh, you're probably tired of talking about the Blazers. Like, no, that's what I do.
It runs in the blood.
What you got? So hit me up right now. All right, we got questions for you, Colin. Here's the first one. It says, Colin, I was engaged for 8 months and my fiance broke things off. Do I have a right to ask for the engagement ring back, or is it just considered a gift? How does that work?
That's a good question. I'm less familiar with that because we, in a divorce setting, we haven't quite got there where I can get my hands on property that was promised. But the question is, well, how do you, if they say no, what's your methodology? What's your action? And I suppose you would file a small claims action. You wouldn't want to pay an attorney because you'll spend far more probably than the engagement ring in litigation costs and civil litigation. So it's I don't know what the small claims actions are, less than 15 or less than 17,000 or something like that. You'd pursue a small claims, but it's a promise for marriage, and the marriage didn't happen. So it seemed rightful that you'd be able to ask for that back.
The person that sent the message or the question didn't specify what the ring value was, but some of those engagement rings, you could be talking $4,000, $5,000, $10,000. They can be pretty expensive.
Exactly, and so, but the funny thing is that does come up in divorce, which is, can I get the wedding ring back? And the answer clearly is once you get married, no, because that is a gift particular to the person that says we got married. That's what I get. The funny thing is, guys get this, $300 gold band, and the ladies get this $20,000, whatever diamond ring.
Yeah.
So it's not a fair trade.
No, not exactly. All right, next question. Colin, I heard you mention this last month with Chad. Could you go over the pros and cons of moving out of the house during the course of a divorce? What are the things I need to consider?
Yeah, the biggest one always is children. It does set a precedent. When you move out, you're creating facts, just like anything you do. And you're going to set a precedent with regard to your children. What is the parenting arrangement going to be? If you move out, you're going to see your kids when you're there, or you're going to have an arrangement with your wife about what that is. And most guys, especially if you don't have a lot of money, are not living in this really nice place. And maybe your kids don't want to go to your buddy's house where you're living in his basement or in his garage. And so you do that for a long enough period of time, it starts a negative precedent with regard to what kind of parenting time you could get. So if you have any eyes on custody or a more significant parenting plan, be very careful of moving out. Also can set precedents for things like spousal support, because bills still need to get paid. If you move out, you got to pay the bills, you got to pay the mortgage, you got to contribute to the household in some other way. And that could set, again, a negative precedent for how much alimony or spousal support, spousal maintenance, whatever you want to call it, you might have to pay down the road. Those are the two biggest areas. And then sometimes on property use. And if you really want the house, don't move out because it's hard to get back in, all of these things. But the biggest thing I would tell people, when you have that much conflict and you have to move out, you may avoid getting a restraining order by lowering the tensions of being in each other's face. So you got to be careful of staying in there just because you got to plant your flag and then ended up with a restraining order, because things get a little bit more robust.
Again, that telephone number, 1-800-DIVORCE. The first call, it's just a consultation. There's no charge. Call, and Colin will get back to you and answer any questions you have. Next question for you. Colin, my husband and I are going through a divorce after 17 years of marriage. I am considering working part-time at a strip club to make ends meet. Is this acceptable to the court, or would it jeopardize my time with the kids when it comes to custody?
All right. Now we're in Portland, right?
Yes.
Isn't that the highest per capita?
I respect the question because that's about as direct as you can get.
I like it. I like that. And there is, this perception, this negative perception that because if you're a performer or a stripper, whatever you want to call it, that all of a sudden you're now a bad parent. And that's not the case. The courts are pretty liberal with regard to that understanding. But the biggest issue is usually when you're, stripping, for lack of a better way to say it, it's at night. And you're putting in, I tell clients, your job, your work schedule has the greatest impact on custody and visitation, things of that nature. So you got to make sure that you're not, you don't leave at 3 when the kids are getting back and you don't get back till 2 a.m. And you're not able to be more of that day-to-day primary care parent. So it's really the schedule that can really cause you a lot of problems. And then the other things that the negative connotations are going to be less important and less persuasive to the court. More of it, are you present? Are you available? Are you taking care of your kids? But I can tell you the best times to perform are not going to be 10 to 2.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I've never swung on a pole. No one ever wants to see that. But my guess is 10 p.m. is more profitable than 10 a.m.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that would be my biggest concern is you're gone when your kids are around.
All right, Colin, do you recommend a prenuptial agreement if neither person is bringing any real assets into the marriage?
That's a great question.
And I would guess a lot of marriages, when you're young, it starts out like that, right?
Yeah.
Where you're not really bringing much in.
That's where I was at. I had a lot of student loan debt, and my
your wife was concerned about your student loan debt.
Yeah, she was like, "Yeah, I'll sign that." You have to take care of that. Absolutely. But here's the deal. I mean, the more control you have over your future and how things are going to be handled, the better off it is. So if you don't have a prenuptial, and let's say you're married for 10 years, you're going to let an entity, a court, or 2 attorneys that are litigating, 2 people who are now angry at each other, litigate whatever you have at that time. In a prenuptial, you can predetermine how you want that to be handled in a rational way that says, okay, I don't want this to happen by chance. And so it's not a bad idea to consider a prenuptial and talk about how are you going to manage asset accumulation or debt accumulation during the marriage. You can't deal with custody or visitation. Spousal support gets a little hanky, but certainly how we're going to accumulate wealth together and how we're going to distribute it later is a good idea.
All right, Colin Amos is in studio. Here's what we're going to do. We have a couple more questions for him, but to show honor to clock integrity, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back and have more with Colin Amos. Again, you can check him out online at goldbergjones-or.com. But the phone number, the most important one, 1-800-DIVORCE, 1-800-DIVORCE. The law offices of Goldberg and Jones. And Colin Amos will answer all of your questions. And in many cases, as Colin has pointed out, you don't even need an attorney, but at least he can clear up any questions you might have. 1-800-DIVORCE. More with Colin Amos when we come back on the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing. All right, before we get to the 2 extra questions, Colin Amos, law offices Goldberg Jones is in the studio, and he is blowing my mind right now. We were talking about twins. So I grew up with a couple of twins in Oklahoma, and it was awesome because Matt and Mike were their names, and they were red hair, but they were identical. You could not tell them apart, but they were cool kids, and we all wanted to hang out with them. So we would just have them switch homerooms occasionally, and the teacher would never know. It was the best thing ever. And we used to laugh about that all the time, and they would finish each other's sentences like they had this sixth sense. But you just told me a wild, a paternity suit case with twins involved. And so identical twins have the same DNA.
Right. And so, so in this situation, they had been on a weekend thing, and there was one gal, and so they both, had relations with the gal over the weekend, and then she ended up getting pregnant, and, they pursued the Division of Child Support against the one presumed father, because that's who she thought, and the defense was, you can't prove it's me. And then the other brother had the same, and they couldn't prove if it was your child or your child because of identical twins. And so it's just crazy. And I don't think they could ever get child support against one of them because they couldn't prove it.
You need to write a book when it's all said and done. When you shut it down, you should write a book of just stories. You don't have to name. You could use assumed names. But with the stuff that you come across, I mean, you're immune to it now because there's nothing that's taken place that you haven't seen before.
No.
But the stories that people would read, be like, no way.
I think I should go in. I'll do the first part on all the crazy things in divorce, and then the ER docs.
Yeah.
All the things that come into the ER.
Good.
After hours.
I used to know an ER doctor, and the stuff that he would tell me, I'm just like, no way.
That does not happen.
How do I say this cleanly? He said there was a guy, like a very prominent, let's say, entrepreneur from the Seattle area. And this doctor worked down here in Portland. And he said that the doctor got something lodged in his body, but didn't want anyone in the Seattle area to know. So he drove.
Oh, how uncomfortable.
Yeah. You got to sit on that. And then, 2.5 hours into Portland. But sure enough, he had to have something removed. And he came all the way down to Portland because he couldn't bear the idea of someone in his local area knowing that, wow, this guy's a freak.
Yeah. Yeah, we have those cases in where people have to go out of county because they just don't want all the embarrassment of all the things that lead to the divorce. The divorce is, pretty benign, but all the stuff they get
that becomes nasty.
They do not want it. One guy settled out. He had a law firm, and he was way out of county. But he was willing to write a check and be done because he did not want all the people that understand his finances and all that. So, yeah.
All right. We got 2 more questions for you, Colin. 1-800-DIVORCE is the telephone number. This question here says, Colin, my husband wants a divorce. We've been married for 9.5 years. I don't want to divorce and would like to try and make it work with counseling or anything that is necessary to get through the difficult time. Is there anything I can do if he's dead set on going through with the divorce?
I get this a lot where people come in. A lot of guys, you'd be surprised at how many more men want to save the marriage. They really want to work on things. And they say, well, I don't want this. So what can we do? What can we file? I'm like, I'm sorry. The one thing I can guarantee you at the end of a divorce, you'll be divorced. I can't guarantee you anything else, the terms, anything else. But I can tell you if she wants it or he wants it, it's going to happen. So, yeah, unfortunately, unless you can somehow convince them to go to counseling and try to figure it out, when they file it, it's a no-fault state. The court does not care. It's a process. At the end of the process, you will be divorced. And then you just got to make sure that you don't put your head in the sand and say, kind of the martyr effect, which fine, take anything, I don't care, because you will live with that result. So just make sure you protect yourself if it for sure is going to happen. But one thing you can do is the process takes a while.
Yeah.
So you don't have to hurry it through because it can take up to a year to go to trial. So if you're holding out hope, you don't have to push it along just in case maybe you can figure some things out.
Yeah, I like that. You're not encouraging them to just give up. It's like, no, it takes a little bit of time so you can continue to try and work with diplomacy and communication.
Which is why there's a lot of states that have a waiting period. Washington State has a waiting period. It's 90 days,
right?
That's right.
But not in Oregon.
Not in Oregon. They abolished it a long time ago. It used to be 90 days. And then they had this, well, if there's some really extenuating circumstances, so everybody had an extenuating circumstance. But California, I think, is 6 months.
But is that waiting period designed to help to hope maybe create some reconciliation?
I think it's very, call it paternalistic of the courts and the legislature to say, you don't really know what's in your best interest. Let us put this waiting period so you're not acting rashly, try to work on the marriage. So I think it was kind of an old law that was there to kind of encourage staying married.
Well, that makes sense. Here's the final question. Colin, how do parents determine school choice once the divorce is finalized? Do both parents have a say in this matter? Would you please explain?
Yeah, this one, we're going to bifurcate it by state. We're going to talk about Oregon and Washington because two different answers on that. In Oregon, we have what we call legal custody, which defines the major decisions. And in the legislature in Oregon says you can't have joint legal custody unless by agreement. And so if you go to court, the court cannot order joint legal custody, which relates to non-emergency health care decisions, educational decisions, and religious decisions. And so education being this question, that person would have the sole authority to say this school or that school or move them or take them out or doing whatever needs to be done, or this doctor or that doctor or medical treatment or put them on ADHD medication. Those are non-emergency health care. In Washington, the standard is joint decision-making. Every case has an order that says joint decision-making. So they really have to collaborate to that point, which leads to a lot more conflict, which I think is why it's astute of Oregon to say, let's avoid all this fighting. Kids have to go to school. We can't have you go to court and spend 6 months arguing about it when the kids are, not going to school. So what ends up happening in Washington is one parent just unilaterally does it and says, challenge me, take me back to court.
All right. So if you live in Washington, do you have to file your divorce in Washington? Like, is it based on the state and where you live?
It's where you live. In Washington, the residency requirements, you just have to reside there and you can file a divorce. However, what really regulates where you can file mostly is where the kids primarily reside.
Yeah.
And all 50 states have adopted this statute called the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdictional and Exchange Act that defines where the kids have resided for the last 6 months as the proper state of jurisdiction for the children.
Okay, so if you live, let's say that you lived with your family, your wife and family in the Portland area, you move out and go to Washington, even though you reside in Washington, because the kids have been in the state of Oregon for the last 6 months, you'd have to file in the state of Oregon.
Even if the kids moved up there with you, Oregon is the proper state of jurisdiction. That's why a lot of states have a 6 month, you have to reside in the state for 6 months like Oregon before you can file a divorce, which we get around by filing a legal separation and then convert it to a divorce after the 6 months. But you cannot get around what we call subject matter jurisdiction, which deals with where the children are going to be heard. So you can actually move to Washington, file a divorce, get a divorce in Washington, but then have to deal with a custody case in Oregon, which is a great way to pay an attorney, two attorneys for one job, So you usually just get the divorce handled in the same place where the kids are.
Now, are your kids married?
No. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for grandkids either.
No.
I'm way too young. I'm only 32.
Yeah. I was going to say 35, but 32 is even
32,
better.
yeah.
So have you done any mountain biking? Like what's next on the agenda for the summertime?
My wife keeps me busy on the weekend, so this weekend I'm going to the San Juans to help her with her. She has a business. It's a rentals for.
Oh, sweet!
But 80% of her business is weddings.
Yeah.
So I bring my cards and I help set up their weddings. And I say, when it doesn't work out, just give me a call. And so she's got me busy this weekend. But no, I'm going to get back to that mountain biking.
That's so awesome that your wife has events. She helps put on weddings, and you help.
She sets them up, I knock them down. It works out good.
All right. So Colin and I, we have a desire. We want every marriage to last. But if it doesn't, and you're facing divorce, 1-800-DIVORCE is the telephone number. Also, Goldberg Jones specializes in prenuptial agreements. If you're considering getting married, that's something that Colin has been over time and time again. You need to consider a prenuptial agreement. And, of course, if you need help with, custody issues, a parenting plan, 1-800-DIVORCE is the telephone number. You can check them out online at goldbergjones-or.com. The law office is at Goldberg Jones. Colin Amos, who joins us every month. I appreciate your time, buddy. That was fun.
It's great.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. Sean Hiking going to join me in studio next. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, it's now 5 o'clock. What's up, my friends? We start with the Oregon State Beavers, who come up a run short. Louisville gets the win 7-6, and the Beavers' season and run to Omaha is over. UCLA and Arkansas are in the second elimination game. Louisville will move on to face Coastal Carolina and need 2 wins to get into the championship series. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they got 32 points off turnovers, took out the Pacers in Game 5. They lead the series 3-2. Game 6 of the finals coming up Thursday in Indy, 5:30 tip on ABC. The Thunder are a 5.5-point favorite. Therese Halliburton has a strained right calf that was aggravated in last night's first quarter. He finished with 4 points, 7 boards, 6 assists on 0 of 6 shooting. He'll have an MRI. Longtime Yankee skipper Joe Torre will be the honorary coach for the AL All-Star team, joining Aaron Boone and Stephen Vogt. Torre will be 85 July 18th. Well, I was digging through some of the numbers, Sean, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, 32 points off of 23 turnovers last night in the Game 5 victory. I guess I'm going to remember the Thunder this year for their defense. I've been watching them and the pressure they apply. And I guess what's so impressive with their defense is, like, they have all the guys on the perimeter that just bring constant pressure. They speed you up and they make you uncomfortable. And then if you somehow get past that wave of defense, you've got Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren hovering and moving around the rim to block shots. And the one thing I noticed last night is, think about how many shots those two have changed throughout the course of the series, where they didn't block the shot, but they impacted the shot. So it doesn't go down on the stat sheet as a block shot, but it's a change shot, which results in a miss. And I'm impressed at the way that Dagnall has been able to get his guys, a young team, to commit to playing on both ends. But, man, they were relentless last night with the pressure. And then when the Pacers cut it to 2 in the fourth, more turnovers led to easy buckets.
I mean, the thing that's really going to loom large is that when the Pacers wasted that, like, very near the end of the third quarter, they could have cut it. McConnell steals not an inbound pass, but like the first pass after the inbound pass, and they miss an open three, and they they move the ball around a few times, and then they just throw the ball out of bounds.
Yeah,
they could have cut it from 6-3 at that point.
Yeah,
going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, they did get it to 2 at one point in the fourth quarter, but then they just weren't able to capitalize. But, yeah, to your point, the Thunder go down that roster as far as, like, the guys that actually play. Who's a bad defender on that team?
They don't have one.
There's not one that actually, like, in the rotation that plays.
And how often do you face a team where usually even good defensive teams, you can find one weak spot where you're like, okay, we're going to attack that. But when the Thunder are on the floor, they don't have a weak access point into the teeth of their defense.
They don't have one.
That's amazing. What a roster they have.
That's why they're one win away from the title.
And what I saw last night too, and part of it was Jalen Williams going off for 40. He was awesome. But you and I have talked about this. You and I think we both predicted the Thunder in the finals because we were believers in what we saw throughout the course of the regular season. I know the concern was their inexperience and the fact they hadn't been there and done that yet. But one thing I've seen is they're passing all the tests. We saw it against Denver. We're seeing it here against the Pacers. And with each test that they passed, like I saw them last night, and especially the way Williams was playing, like they now look like a team that believes, like, yeah, we belong here. We are the best team, and we're about to win an NBA championship. Like they're playing with a lot of confidence right now.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a team that, they don't have. I mean, who's the oldest guy on the team? Is it like Hartenstein, who's like 27?
It's either him or Caruso.
Yeah. And I mean, now Caruso does have the experience because he was on that Lakers team that won the title in 2020 in the bubble.
Yeah.
So they have one guy that has that level of experience, but they don't have somebody like Pascal Siakam who's been in the league for 10 years, or even a Miles Turner who's been he was in the 2015 draft. He's pretty, tenured guy too. Or even like on the Pacers bench, he never plays, but James Johnson is a guy who's been in the league for 15, 16 years.
Yeah, it's
The
impressive.
Thunder don't have that.
All right, a couple of things I want you to hear. This is in regard to Tyrese Halliburton, who is not 100%. He's got the strained calf that was aggravated in last night's first quarter. And after the game last night, Tyrese talked about being out there in Game 5 playing while dealing with the injury.
I mean, it's NBA Finals. It's the finals, man. I've worked my whole life to be here, and I want to be out there to compete. Help my teammates any way I can. I was not great tonight by any means, but it's not really a thought of mine to not play here. If I can walk, then I want to play. So they understand that, and is what it is, and got to be ready to go for Game 6.
All right, Sean, that's Tyrese Halliburton. Here's Rick Carlisle talking about Tyrese after the game.
He's not 100%. It's pretty clear. But I don't think he's going to miss the next game. And, we were concerned at halftime. And he insisted on playing. And I thought he made a lot of really good things happen in the second half. But he's not 100%, and there's a lot of guys in this series that aren't.
All right. He finished last night with 4 points, 7 boards, 6 assists. He was 0 of 6 from the floor. It was pretty obvious when you're watching him that, you knew he couldn't get the separation necessary to really make a big impact on the offensive end. But what is the proper way to handle a situation like that where you have one of your best players who's not 100%? He wants to play, but there may be spots where he's on the floor where he's not helping you necessarily.
We'll see supposedly he's getting an MRI later today. Maybe while we're on the air, we get the news alert about the results of that MRI. So we're going to find out the severity of the strain. If it's like a grade 2 or higher, he probably shouldn't be playing, even though they're going to say, he wants to. And, all the stuff that he just said in that clip that you just played of, if he can walk, he's going to play. Obviously, whenever it's a calf thing, your mind immediately goes to Kevin Durant in the finals in 2019 against Toronto, where he missed the first few games with the calf injury, and then he played in the game and tore his Achilles, and then that was obviously you don't want it to go to that place. So they do need to be careful. But unfortunately, whether he plays or not, based on how he looked last night in Game 5, I think the series is probably over now.
Yeah, if he is unable to make an impact or he's not on the floor for Game 6, like as much as I want a Game 7, I could very easily see the Thunder going in and finishing the series off on Thursday in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Or, because TJ McConnell he's been great. Like, he's a great role player, but we know how this works. Like, you put TJ McConnell in the game and he plays bigger minutes. He's not the strength that Halliburton is. So I don't know if you can get larger minutes and better production from TJ McConnell or not, or if he becomes a liability and something the Thunder are able to exploit.
McConnell's playing the exact right amount of minutes for TJ McConnell. You can't, he's not a guy. He's been incredible in this series at both ends of the floor, and he basically, they didn't end up winning that game, but he basically got them that big lead in the third quarter of Game 5 that they, or not Game 5, Game 4 rather, that they ended up blowing. But he was a big part of why they got that lead. But he's not a guy that, Tyrese Halliburton is out, we can just plug TJ McConnell in there and he's going to be our guy. The only way that the Indy's going to be able to stay alive in the series is if Tyrese Halliburton is the version of himself that he was at the previous rounds of the playoffs in the first couple games of this series. If he either doesn't play on Thursday or he plays and he looks like he looked last night and it's clearly still bothering him and he just can't really do everything he wants to do, I don't really see a path for Indy.
Well, the one thing I've learned about this series, I don't know how you feel about this, Sean, but regardless of what the television ratings are, I couldn't care less. I've been thoroughly entertained by the series, but I think this NBA Finals is a win for team basketball. And I think the Pacers and Thunder are putting on a good show for the league, where you're seeing two smaller markets, two teams where players who don't have big names are now starting to emerge as you start to see how talented they are. Like, I think it's been a very good series for the league.
I was thinking about what the last finals is that I enjoyed this much. And the most recent one that I really was into that to this degree was the 2021, the Milwaukee Phoenix one.
Yeah.
And then before that, it might have been that first Heat Spurs finals in 2013.
Yeah, that was a great series.
Yeah. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, all of the Cavs Warriors ones, there were like different injuries going on with different guys. Like, and you know, and then, you know, the thing people forget about the 2016 finals, Game 7 was incredible, but the rest of that series was like not that, you know, it wasn't like this. Really, the only bad game, or the only game that wasn't really that competitive in this series, was Game 2, which the Thunder won pretty handily. Other than that, all of the other 4 games in the series have been great, and you know, I hope that continues. But again, if Halliburton is not 100% or he can't play, then you know that might just be it.
Well, you make a good point. You know, we remember the 2016 finals because Game 7 was unreal, and you had the great heroics of LeBron and Kyrie at the end of that game. But the Warriors dominated and controlled the first 4 games of the series, and then you had the situation where Bogut gets hurt. The Cavs win with relative ease on the road in Game 5, and then they had a blowout win in Game 6.
Draymond gets suspended.
Yeah,
all this stuff. Yeah,
yeah. So you know, I was thinking back, you know, through the series. You know, the one thing that's great, there's something special about a Game 7 in the NBA Finals. Like, I can think back, and there are multiple Game 7s that come to mind. I just like the pressure and the intensity of a Game 7, the finality of it. So I hope we get that. This series has been so good and so well played by both sides that I feel like we deserve a Game 7. The players deserve a Game 7, so I hope it gets to that point. But you're right. If Halliburton is out or highly ineffective, it's going to be very difficult for them to get over, even though they're going to be playing at home. And the one advantage they'll have, and we're seeing this with the Thunder, is that the Pacers and Thunder at home, their role players have been much more impactful in those games than they have been on the road.
Absolutely. No, I'm not gonna 100% count the Pacers out until the clock is at 0 on the next game that the Thunder are winning. But without him, I don't know. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, he's been the straw that's stirred the drink for him this year. It's been great. So we'll see how things shake out. You know, with the Pacers, I got to give them props. I didn't pick them to go to the finals. They were never a thought in my mind to go to the NBA Finals, but I think you and I talked about them early in the playoffs. Like, they're a difficult matchup, but again, just like the Thunder, Carlisle's gotten those guys to buy in. Like, they defend really well.
Yeah,
they play their butts off.
This has been a really well-coached series, both sides.
Yeah, and they're deep, just like the Thunder. Both teams are real deep.
Yeah.
Like, there's certain guys who are like, oh, I forgot that they have him. You know, so it's pretty nice. But, yeah, well played, well coached, too. You know, Dagnall and Rick Carlisle have done a good job. So we'll see how things shake out. Maybe, you know, Game 7 would be great. I would like to see that. And I would like to see how the Thunder would handle the pressure of a Game 7 at home. You know,
that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, it would be. All right. We'll keep things rolling. We have a 4-pack of tickets for the Hillsboro Hops that we want to give away right now. It's Hops Ticket Tuesday. Telephone number is 503-248-0620. They're going to be taking on Spokane June 27th at Hillsboro Ballpark. If you'd like to go, we'll take the first caller right now. Call 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620. 4-pack of tickets for the Hillsboro Hops against Spokane June 27th at Hillsboro Ballpark. First caller through, call now. 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620. First caller through will get a 4-pack of tickets for the Hops. You can sit in the Rip City Radio row, and you'll see them take on Spokane on June 27th at Hillsboro Ballpark. And a great time to go because you can see the work that's being done on the brand new stadium, which is going to be beautiful. Sean Hike and our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report is in studio. We'll more with him next on the Rip City Drive. All right, Sean Hyken is in studio, and I'm very happy to have him because we got the draft coming up a week from tomorrow. The Trailblazers will have pick number 11. And, I got to be honest with you, Sean. You and I have talked about this at length, but the more people I talk to, like, the idea that the Blazers may not make any big moves draft night or into free agency at the beginning of the league year, like, I don't think it's impossible that the team could look relatively the same when the year begins. And the reason why I say that is that you've pointed this out, and I agree with you, that what do you think the odds are the Blazers would do a net negative, meaning attach a pick to a player just to move him out of town? Probably slim to none.
That I don't think they would do. I think the thing that's really going to define this offseason is whether they're able to move some of those veterans. I mean, I think we've talked about this many times. The one that's really the most urgent is, in my opinion, is Jeremy Grant. But, if they're able to trade him and maybe not get a ton back, but not, again, have to give up stuff to get off of the money, which I think is possible. Like, these teams are always, moving stuff around, and I think it's easier to match money and do that kind of stuff in the offseason than it is at the trade deadline. Then, that's the thing I think has probably got the most, chance of happening. But as far as, can they go into the season with DeAndre Ayton? Sure. Could they go into the season with Anthony Simons still on the team? Sure. Yeah. Like those, as far as that stuff, like, unless there's some, big, huge multiplayer, future draft capital type of deal that nobody sees coming, like the one that Orlando just did with Memphis a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
I think you're probably looking at maybe more incremental changes, because even though Joe Cronin did say at the end of the season that they want to take a step forward next season and that their goal is to be in the playoffs, or at least be competing for the playoffs, I don't think they're in the position where they're going to be like, oh, we got to trade 4 future draft picks for a guy who's like maybe not going to be a needle mover and maybe he's going to cap our ceiling. I don't think they're going to do anything that you would consider stupid in order to shortcut their process. But I also don't I also don't think they're just going to be like, okay, we're just going to bring this exact same roster that just won 36 games into next season and hope that we can now win 45.
Yeah. So, Jeremy Grant, you and I both agree, like, that's the number one priority. Yeah. I believe that. Like, and the reason why, can you explain, like, why do you believe Jeremy Grant is the number one priority? Can you kind of explain to the Blazer fans why it would be important to move Grant this offseason?
It's a pretty simple explanation, which is that the two players that I think are the most sure things to be a part of whatever it is going forward are their other two forwards, Denny Avdia and Toumani Camara, and both of those guys have to start. And the other thing is that when you look at the Blazers' books, as far as like their salary, you look at their other veterans or other guys on big contracts. DeAndre Ayton up after this coming season. Anthony Simons up after this season. Robert Williams up after this season. Matisse Thybulle, even assuming he picks up that player option, which I think he will, up after this season. Jeremy's got 3 years left on his deal. That's the one guy where, like, if you want to have flexibility to do stuff, that's the one guy that's kind of there, and the salary number is bigger than maybe what his role should be right now. So that's the one that, between the on-court fit and the salary cap stuff, that's the one that I think would make the most sense. If you can get anything done with, you should try to do something.
Yeah. So if you move someone like Grant, I guess the other challenge would be too is that you're going to have to take back salary in the process, right? When you're moving a contract of that size, so they're going to have to take back some salary.
But I think the argument there would be that maybe you, instead of trading him for another player that's making $30 million a year, you maybe trade him for two guys that are making $15 million a year, so that it's less like, we have to get off of this one big contract. You split it up into smaller pieces, and then it's easier to do stuff with those smaller pieces.
So the team that you deal Grant to, you're probably looking at a team that would view Grant as someone that could be a valuable part of whatever they're building.
Which that does exist. There, he had a down year last year, but I don't think he's a completely worthless NBA rotation player anymore. I think that contract is not looking great, but it's, he's still a good player. Like, he's still a guy that could help teams. I think there will be a team I don't know who it is at this point, but there will be somebody this summer, I think, that will look at him and say, this is somebody that can help us.
Yeah, he's a very good 3-point shooter. And how would you classify him defensively? Like above average?
He's not what he was 2 years ago, but
Yeah.
he's still like he's not like getting killed out there on that end.
Yeah, exactly. So a guy that is serviceable on defense and someone that, here in Portland, up until last year, I mean, the previous couple of years, he was shooting the three ball at a very high rate.
He had a down shooting year, but he could have just been having a down year. I don't think he like forgot how to shoot overnight. That's a skill that usually ages pretty well.
And then what do you do? Like, let's say that a deal is not made, and then you enter in the season with Grant still on the roster. What do you do then? Do you start Grant? Do you have him come off the bench? Like, how would you, if that scenario plays out? How do you think they would handle that?
I think there's really no argument to not have both Denny Avdia and Tumani Kamara in the starting lineup. So where that leaves Grant, I don't know. I think maybe he would have to come off the bench, which, that's going to be something. That's why Chauncey got that extension, is because they feel like he is able to communicate whatever he needs to communicate to guys. And so, as the coach, your job is to, if it comes to that, your job is to get whoever it is on board with whatever their role is going to be.
Yeah. And for me, like when it comes to Kamara and Denny, like I think right now today, I really believe that those are your two best players. Like the two best players on the team are Denny and Tumani. And that's no disrespect to anybody else. I just think that for what they do, their ability to play both ways, the high volume in which they play, I think those are the two best players on the roster. Incredibly valuable.
Did you see the new interview that Tumani did today that just came out?
I haven't seen it yet.
So
no.
there's this, I forget the name of it, but there's this podcast that I think it's a Belgian media outlet.
Yeah.
But it's like it's definitely like, because like I'm pretty sure it's a Belgian outlet because he's talking about because like they're talking about like guys that played in Belgium, like but it's like an hour and 37 minutes of just a sit down interview with this guy. I guess is like a Belgian journalist, and Tumani just going through his entire career to this point in his like life and his journey. It's I'll send you the link after we get off the air. It's really it's on YouTube. It's worth. I tweeted out the link to it today.
Did you learn anything about Tumani you didn't know before?
I mean, I kind of knew the broad strokes of his story already, but it's just the more you listen to him talk, and I've gotten to know him quite well over the last 2 years, but like the more you listen to him talk and like kind of just hear his approach and his mentality and just kind of the way he thinks about the game, like. It just makes you even more confident that he's definitely going to be a core part of what they have going over the next couple of years.
Is he the most prominent Belgian player of all time?
I can't think of another one off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, I can't either. He might. I know Denny Avdia is the best Israeli player of all time.
Yeah.
So maybe Tumani is the most prominent Belgian player of all time.
I mean, I'll have to, during the commercial break, I guess I'll go and...
I've got to check. I don't... I mean, I just don't know anyone off the top of my head with Belgian ties.
We'll look it up. I'll bet there's somebody that we're going to feel dumb about mentioning, but I can't think of anybody off the top of my head.
But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Denny's the same way. I learned some things through him about the year, but his mentality is really good. But yeah, Tumani is soft spoken, but on the court he's an absolute dog. But
yeah.
But what I learned, what I realized about him, and I think fans too, is that he a lot of players, they talk about not wanting to be a certain type of player. But like with Tumani, like he took it personal that he was known as just a defensive guy.
Right.
And he didn't want to be an offensive liability. So like he went in and he worked his ass off last offseason. And that work paid off because we saw the dividends of a guy who could hit the three, shot a better 3-point percentage, and also someone that, I mean, he was he developed an ability to, a little head fake, and he would drive past the kick out. Like he showed dramatic improvement on the offensive end. And the best part about that, Sean, is that he's young.
I think there's still another, if he's going to put the work in, which I think obviously he will, but there's still at least one or two more levels that he has to get to offensively.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at Tumani now, and I'm thinking, okay, the defense is there. 3-point shooting is improving. He's showing an ability to put the ball on the floor and attack the rim. He's great in the open floor. Like he's got a chance to continue with this type of work and with his determination. I mean, he could become. I mean, what we see today, he might become much more than just that, with being multi dimensional when he's out there, and the basketball's on both ends. He's got that type of ability,
He could be.
and he's super long and athletic.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just the type of guy. And I mean, it's the type of guy every team wants. So, we'll see. I mean, I think defensively, to your point, he just got a second team all defense as a second-year player. Like, that we already kind of know what he does on that end, but how much better is he going to get offensively? I think that's going to be the question of the next couple of years. But, given the leap that he made on that end from year 1 to year 2, makes you think that, year 2 to year 3, there might be even another one coming.
Yeah, I was thinking about that with Denny, too, because we saw Denny do so much this year with the Trailblazers. And I think part of the thing that helped him is he had so much freedom as the season went along from Chauncey Billups to really, look to attack and do so many different things. I'm wondering with Denny, like, because he's young as well, like, does he have another level or two that he can continue to go up?
I think the Blazers feel like he does. I mean, I'm not watching like his off-season workouts. I'm not in the room for that stuff, so I don't know exactly what he's doing or how it's paying off or, whatever the case may be. But it's definitely true that he was never allowed to handle the ball or do as much stuff with the ball in Washington as he was able to do last year. And, you saw it started off a little rough the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season as he was kind of getting used to this new role. There was some games where he had like 7, 8 turnovers because he just was doing stuff that he had never really been allowed to do before. But then after the first, few weeks, maybe first month and a half of the season, you started to see some of that stuff tighten up a little bit, and he started settling into his role that, everybody else kind of started figuring out how to play around him. And then you saw what you saw the rest of the season from him.
Yeah. And the other thing that jumped out at me, you probably saw this too, but Denny's one of those players where when he's on the floor, it sure looks like through my eye that the other players around him seem to play better.
Mm-hmm.
Like he kind of, when he's on the floor, everyone else kind of settles in and they play better off of Denny when he's out there.
He's a playmaker. That's what he is. He's unselfish. He plays both ends of the floor. Yeah, he's him and Tumani are the two guys that I think are at least as of right now. I don't know whether either of them are, the proverbial best player on a championship team necessarily, but they're both guys like both of those guys would get minutes on either team in the current finals.
Yeah. Now I know you're like me when it comes to the NBA draft. Like I'm not a draft guru and I don't watch all of the players throughout the course of the regular season. Are there any names that could be around 11 that you're hearing that the Blazers may have interest in? Or you're not really sure in that department?
It's tough to feel out kind of who actually has as much interest in who, because everything you kind of hear this time of year is usually either a smoke screen or just like bad intel. But as far as like guys that could be there that would make sense for them to draft, there's a few that kind of come to mind there. There's one of them that you kind of hear, and he was actually the pick that was given to the Blazers in ESPN's newest mock draft that went out today is Kasparis Yakachionis, the kind of a bigger guard / wing type of playmaker type. Played at Illinois, from Lithuania. That's a guy that you kind of hear them connected to a lot. Another one is Carter Bryant out of Arizona, who at the combine when he was asked like which players he studies, one of his answers was Tumani Kamara. So he's kind of that, it's kind of like a similar type of like, defensive wing that, has some offensive upside that hasn't really been tapped into yet. That's the type of guy that, it would make sense for them to maybe target there. If they want to take another swing on a prospect that's maybe a little bit further away, Noah Estingway, who is French. He was actually on the German team that played here in the preseason, but he's kind of he's another guy that kind of, if they wanted to take a little bit more of a raw, swing on a project, that's a guy they could go after. Another one that this one, like you hear, he's been in some mock drafts at different outlets going to Portland, and you see kind of the vision there. But Egor Demin, the kid, the Russian kid who played at BYU, that's another one that you've kind of heard connected to them. That he's apparently the best passer in the draft, but he's kind of a bigger guy. He's like a 6'9" point guard. He does kind of a lot of the same stuff as Denny does, but there's questions about his shot. There's questions about his defense. So it's not like an exact perfect fit, but those are kind of some of the guys that if one of those 4 guys I just named is on the board, that's probably in the ballpark of like where they could be looking.
So you would expect another two-way type player, right?
Yeah.
Someone with defensive capabilities.
I mean, that tends to be what they target, right? I mean, you saw that that's what they prioritize with Klingon. Scoot Henderson's a smaller guard, but he certainly competes on that end. He's not a complete, traffic cone on the defensive end. He competes there. Shaden Sharp, obviously, it's been kind of up and down with him on that end, but he has the tools to be a good defender. Like that, it does seem like those are the types of prospects that they go after. Yeah.
Yeah, that with Shaden Sharp, he had stretches where coach was complimentary of his defense. He obviously had stretches where he wasn't getting it done on that end, and
got benched because of it.
He got benched because of it. So I guess for me, and I think you brought up this point too, with Shaden Sharp, I just want to see. I know he's got the capability. I want to see this year. I'm hoping to see more consistency, night in and night out, on both ends from Shaden.
He's got to do it every night. If he does it every night, if he can do that on a consistent basis, I think he has. I think we've talked about this many times over the last couple of years. He's the most talented player on the roster. If he was able to do, the best version of Shaden, which is the Atlanta game early on in the season. There's a couple of others. I don't remember the exact games off the top of my head, but the Atlanta one is one that I remember. If he can do that every night, he could be an all-star.
I agree.
It's just, is he going to ever get to the level where he's doing that every night? And it's going to be real interesting to see what they do as far as, he's extension eligible this summer. What's that going to look like? Do they seen enough of him that they feel like, okay, we can commit, a lot, upwards of, $25, $30 million a year, whatever it is, to him based on what we've seen so far? Or are they going to let it play out? And that's going to be this. So this is a big year for him either way.
Yeah, big year for Shaden Sharp. It's one of the reasons why I'm excited, or I was, looking forward to when I got the news, or we got the news that Chauncey Billups was going to be back on the extension. I love the idea of a young team, young players, getting a chance to come back and build upon their defensive improvements over the second half of the season last year, knowing that they're going to have the same coach, same system, same expectations. Like, they're going to know exactly what they need to do. I think that's going to help the young guys continue to build on what they were able to really accomplish in that second half of the year. Like, I like that. That continuity there could help the young guys continue to grow as they move forward, especially defensively.
It's a bet on continuity for sure, but there is still, I think, some sort of consolidation, roster-wise, and clearing up some of the rotational stuff that does need to be done. Like, I don't think they can just this summer pick somebody at 11 and then just not do anything else.
Yeah. There's got to be consolidation.
I think,
or so we hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice. I think, at least in my mind, like, what I'm hoping is, like, they resolve the Jeremy Grant situation, and they resolve if they resolve Grant and Ant this offseason, wouldn't that be helpful going into next year?
One way or the other, you either trade Ant or you extend him.
Yeah. So you trade Grant and then resolve Ant, but at least then you know
one
moving
of the
forward
ways,
what it's going to be.
one direction or the other, yes.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. Sean Heikens in studio, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. The NBA draft is coming up a week from tomorrow, and it's going to be a big night. The Blazers are going to have a block party, a draft edition, and it's going to be down there at the Rose Quarter campus, and it's going to be an opportunity for you to hang out. And we're going to have a lot of great things going on, including a prize pack that you can enter to win. And it's going to include a Scoot Henderson autographed jersey, a Trailblazers autographed pennant, and 4 Coors Light silver seats to an upcoming game this year. You can stop by and enter for your chance to win. The broadcast with the Rip City Drive will start at 3. That will go up until 4:30. Travis Demers will take over along with Francis Williams at 4:30. And they'll be on throughout the first round of the draft into Joe Cronin's press conference. The Blazers have DJ OG1 on hand. Face painters are going to be there. They'll have Connect 4 and Blow Up Pop-A-Shot. And you can sample some beverages at Dr. Jack's. Michelob Ultra, Coors, Hop Valley, and 19 Acres. June 25th, a week from tomorrow, the NBA draft here on 620 Rip City Radio. Yeah, I wish I knew the exact number. How many calls? Like Joe Cronin's probably getting a lot of calls on Denny Avdi and Tamani Kamara. Teams just fishing to see if they might be available, right? Because they're so valuable. The type of guys that teams want.
Two-way guys that are on cheap contracts. That's, I mean, teams want them. I don't think Joe is really. I don't think the Blazers are really interested in moving either one of them. I think those are the two guys on the team that I'm most confident are not going to be moved.
Yeah. You've solved the Jeremy Grant thing in my mind. Like, I agree with you. Like, if they could move Grant and get a couple of players in return who are, cheaper per year, but equal the same, number of dollars that Jeremy's making, like, that works in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you find a couple of younger guys that may be able to help, maybe not. But then you ultimately, you bring clarity to the rotation because you clear out the space to open up Avdi and Kamara playing and starting next to one another.
Or just guys that don't make so much money that you feel like they have to start.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Well, that's what I was wondering about Grant. Like, if he is on the roster to start the year, like, he's a veteran and respected by guys on the team. And, it's, the economics in the NBA can be tough when you got a guy who's making 30+ million and he's not starting. And how do the guys respond in the locker room to one of the vets not, starting and is coming off the bench? Like, a lot of times as fans, we don't think about that, but the dynamics within the locker room are something I consider when I look at, potential situations, right?
Again, that's what Chauncey got the extension for. His job is to manage that stuff and keep everybody on the same page.
Yeah. Like, you remember this too, I'm sure. Like, when Dame and CJ were together here in Portland, there was a lot of people like, well, why don't we bring in a defensive-minded guy next to Dame and CJ can come off the bench? And I'm like, well.
Yeah, CJ's not going to go for that.
No, that just wouldn't work. CJ is a starter. He considers himself a starter, so he'd be like, nah, I'm good. I'll continue to start. And I don't have a problem with that. Like, players who are starting level players, if they don't want that role coming off the bench, I can get that, right?
The flip side of that, though, is how many guys actually have the clout to make it into a problem if they don't. Like,
not many.
If, like, let's say whatever happens in training camp, and for whatever reason on opening, let's say they don't trade Simons. And on opening night in October, Chauncey Billups decides to start Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe in the backcourt.
Yeah.
And have Simons be the sixth man. He can, make it known that he's unhappy about that. But is Anthony Simons somebody who has the juice to, make that into like a distraction or a problem or, something that people talk about as like, put it this way. If somebody, and this isn't just Ant, this is like anybody kind of at that level, a good player who, is a good starter, never been an all-star. If a guy like that were to like request a trade, are the talking head shows on ESPN going to spend 1 second on it?
No, the only person with that type of clout in recent history and here in Portland has been Dame.
Yeah, even CJ didn't really have a lot of like that type of.
No. In fact, you can count. There aren't too many guys like that in history for any team, right? You have certain guys who have clout because they're franchise players. And so they can kind of dictate terms.
And I don't think anybody on the current Blazer roster has that type of pull.
No. I mean, Denny Avdia got moved to the bench. We saw Shaedon Sharpe get benched. Like, the one thing, but I agree with you, and it's an important point that you made, Sean. Part of the job, part of the reason why NBA head coaches make the money that they do is because they're the ones that have to deal with and navigate through some of the conflict, right? Like, I remember the example I always use is a good one, but the Warriors, before they won their first championship with Steph, Clay, and that group, early in the season that year in 2015, after Kerr had taken over, Andre Iguodala, legitimate NBA player, starter, was out with an injury. Well, Draymond Green played, and they realized real quick, like,
we should start this guy?
Yeah, we should start Draymond Green. He's really good. So what Kerr had to do was go to Andre Iguodala, knowing it wasn't going to be an easy conversation. Be like, look, Andre, we got to start Draymond. But he did. But what he did is he explained it in a way where it's like, look, we need to start Draymond, but I need you to be the captain of the bench, and you're still going to get big minutes, and you're going to have a chance to shine, and you're going to be able to. It's going to be better for you, and it's also going to be better for the team. And by painting that picture, he got him to buy in, and they ended up winning a championship. And then, of course, Iguodala won the Finals MVP. But that's not an easy conversation, but it was one that had to be had.
And, for wherever people want to land on the job that Chauncey has done as far as, what they think about, the plays that he runs or, substitution patterns, whatever. The thing that has, the people that were in favor of him getting this extension, and the reason that the team ultimately gave it to him was because he has the relationships with the players. He has, the buy-in. He has the support. The players all respect him. The players all listen to what he says. There comes a time when that's, who you are as a coach, that you kind of have to cash in some of that equity and have those conversations that need to be had if it does come to that, depending on what happens this offseason.
It's funny you mentioned that. The one conversation I remember with you throughout the year, and I know you do too, it was early in the season after they got whacked by Memphis at home. And they had the 2 home games, back-to-back games coming up against Minnesota. You and I looked each other in the eye. We were talking on the air. And it's like, the next 2 games are going to tell us a lot about Chauncey Billups.
And then they won both of them.
They won both of them. And after that, we're like, he still got their ear.
Against the team that ended up making the Western Conference Final.
Exactly.
So
that was one of those moments where like, oh, okay, Chauncey still got their ear.
Yeah.
And remember, he called them out after that game too.
Yeah, called them losers. But again, if you're the guy that, is in the position that he's in because the players respect him and the players listen to him, that, here now you're going to have to test that. Now you're going to have to, whether it's whichever any of these veterans, if you want to bring either any of them off the bench, you've got to cash in some of that equity and some of that goodwill that you've built up over the last few years to make that happen. That's why he got this extension. That's why they're paying him what they're paying.